Steve Harley, welcome back to Liverpool.
It's been a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes, it's been a while since I've played this wonderful hall.
Can you do the maths?
I wouldn't have a clue. We play a lot of shows. Basically on tour, like we are, you struggle to remember where you were, and I mean this literally yesterday. You really have to stop and think, where have we come from? Someone said to me yesterday's sound check, one of the musicians said, that was a great night in Tunbridge Wells, wasn't it? And I said, well, when was that? We've been, of course, it all comes back, but you have to think it through.
Yeah. In that case, can I take you back even further than Tunbridge Wells and ask, what is your first memory of music entering your life?
Well, my mum was a singer. She was a very good swing jazz singer of the era, 40s. She was born in the late 20s. So in the mid-40s, she was a young woman singing in a swing band. She sang with Johnny Dankworth's orchestra for a very brief period before Cleo Lane. She was that good. She sang a bit like, not Vera Lynn, the other one from that band era, who was English. But she sang really, really well. She sang around the house when we were kids, around the flat.
Anne Shelton?
Anne Shelton. Yeah. My mum was very much like that. Yeah, thank you, yeah. And so the Light programme was on the radio, the transistor, or in the 50s, the radiogram. The wireless. Yes. They had a radiogram, one of the big old things, top lifted up, a few LPs could be placed, or 78.
Workers' playtime.
Yeah, well, that was always on. Sundays was like Jack Jackson. And she sang along to everything on the radio. We all knew there was singing in her, in the genes. So the music was always around us.
Did you accompany her to these shows?
No, before I was born.
Okay, so this was...
No,
okay.
She was a singer in the 40s. I wasn't born till the 50s. Okay. I was the second child. Like all women of that generation, of that era, they had a baby and stopped working. She never worked again, my mother. Not when she was 21 years old. No, I never saw her sing myself, other than weddings and things. She would give it a blast. So the radio was on, and I heard things like, I loved pop music with words. I loved Buddy Holly in particular, when I was only 8 or 9 years old, late 50s.
I was going to say, at age 10, you were given the guitar.
No, I was 12.
Were you 12? Okay.
Yeah, I was 11 pushing 12. It was a couple of months before my 12th birthday that Christmas. Yeah. And I had been pushing for a guitar. But my dad was a milkman on a small wage, low wage, who did an afternoon job as a janitor in the blocks of flats we lived in, which were very civilised. It was a Victorian block of beautiful apartments. So he worked very hard, my dad, but he had 5 children. Even then he had 4 in 61. My youngest brother wasn't born yet. But I begged for it, I pushed for it. And I'd been in hospital that whole year. 10 and a half months I was away in hospital from January to December. And
this is 1963?
Yeah,
what a big
62.
Year in music. 62,
62,
okay.
Yeah. 62, 63, that certainly, and that one or the other.
What had made you want to beg for a guitar?
Well, in hospital we had a transistor radio in 63. I was back in for a long period, and there were 12 young lads. It was a children's hospital, all under 16 or under, and no one under about 12. I would have been the youngest at 11. No one under 10. Between 10 and 16, they kept us in that sort of block. And there were only 12 of us. And we had the radio on all the time. Feeling glad all over. Dave Clark 5, I remember well, we used to clap along to. She Loves You was happening. The Fabs. And Dylan was coming on with Blowing in the Wind and The Times They Are A-Changin'. And I realised I was always into words. I don't know why particularly. My dad was uneducated, left school at 13, and my mum was nothing artistic about her at all.
What started you off with words then? I mean, were you reading with the books, certain books?
Just an innate Piscean love of art, the creative arts. It's a very Piscean characteristic, of course, and I am a bona fide Piscean. through and through. Yeah. My school were kind. My English master from the age of 13 to 17, when I left before finishing my A-levels, is still one of my closest friends and came to see us play just a few nights ago in Tunbridge Wells in Kent.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. He turned me on to things that were extracurricular. I was studying at 11 and 12. Well, I was away a year. I was away another year, January to December, when I was 15, studying at that year for the O-levels. What do you call them now? GCSE? But O-levels. I'd studied that year then and got back in time to take the exams at school. But I would finish the work very quickly. They would ship it down by a parental visit or a school visit. And a couple of the masters used to come and see me. And I'd get the curriculum, as in do that essay, read that book, write that essay, do these sums. And I would do it quickly because I had nothing else to do. And we had a teacher, even then in the early 60s, she was an elderly woman, probably born in about 1880, 1890, with a leather false arm. And she was our teacher.
Right.
I remember her very well. And she was teaching us, but I was encouraged to do the schoolwork. And I'd wrap it up pretty rapidly, and then the English department would start sending me stuff that extracurricular. They were sending me. I was reading Dharma Bums and On the Road, Kerouac, and Hemingway was sending me Hemingway. I was reading Fiesta and The Sun Also Rises when I was 12. So somehow, and if I didn't understand a lot of it, I wrote everything, every word. I learned very early to write every word down that I was going to look up. You try reading D.H. Lawrence when you're 12.
Yeah.
It's like, if you can say it in 10 words, why bother with one? I mean, Lawrence's words, and very long $10 words, as Hemingway called them, a lot of $10 words. So you need a thesaurus or a dictionary beside you to read D.H. Lawrence. For a coal miner's son from Nottingham, that's an amazing, self-educated man. And so I don't know, words. It either turns you on or it doesn't. And it turned me on. And Bob Dylan was saying, look, I can write poetry to 3 and 4 chords on an acoustic guitar. It was like a miracle. They only happen in the Bible, but it truly moved me. And I think I was always going to be a journalist, which of course I was. You'd get that the careers advisory person would come once a year to certain classes, age groups, and they would say to me, and what do you think you'll do? And I'd say, I'm going to be a newspaper reporter, which was just all, I was born with inky fingers. I had idols and they were in Fleet Street. Sports writers, Ken Jones, Hugh McIlvanney, who is one of the great poesy writers of modern times to this day in his 80s. And they were my idols. I couldn't wait for my dad had the Daily Mirror, and even at 12, 13, 14, I couldn't wait for it to come through the letterbox in the morning. I grabbed it first. I had to read the sports pages. But I don't know, Dylan changed. I was always going to be a reporter, and they'd say, well, what's the alternative? That's a tough one. And I'd say, no. And finally I got the job after 9 months of interviews, and I asked the proprietor, why did you take me on? I went to 21 interviews over 9 months. And he said, well, nice, he said, one of the major necessary traits of character for a reporter is persistence, and you've got that in spades. Took me on because I never gave up.
Were in. You were in. You also had a guitar. You've got the guitar. I mean, did it come naturally? Did playing come naturally to you? Did you play in a day with Bert Wheaton? How did you master the guitar?
Well, interestingly, I grew up in southeast London, in this block of flats, and just around the corner were these 1930s semi-detached little palaces, they were known as, the semi-detached with the bow window, 3-bedroom with a little bathroom. And my two friends were Jewish. My Jewish friends, Ron and Martin J, and their dad, who was a great joke teller, really funny Jew, just a bona fide funny Jewish bloke, who ran a business. He had a men's clothing store at the docks, down in Surrey Docks in Rotherhithe, Bermondsey. So he was a businessman, but he did nightclubs and working men's clubs, semi-pro, and was very funny. And entirely different to my house. My dad was a terrible snob, being working class, you know, and with ideas above. He became an awful snob, my dad, bless him. Whereas the real middle classes, like my friend's dad, were just relaxed about life. So he was very funny and rude. You get no rude words in my house. My dad would just throw you out and send you to your room. But they were hilarious, and they, like their dad, at weekends as schoolboys, would play the working men's clubs up and down the country. They would travel to quite a long way north from London to play a working men's club. And Martin, who's still a session singer in London to this day, he's a couple of years older than me, taught me to play the guitar. He was a good guitarist, and he taught me the chords to Blowing in the Wind and, you know, C and G and the F and its relative minors and stuff. And then I studied it. I just kept reading it. And I played the violin for 4 years at school, so I could read music. I can still read a top line now.
How would you describe, I mean, was it folk music that you were playing at that point?
Yeah, I mean, when you say play the guitar, I would never get in a group.
Right.
No one would have me in. I couldn't play in a group. If I didn't run it, I wouldn't have any work, you know. I might just get by these days. I've improved. I could get by in most bands as a rhythm guitarist, but only that.
Right.
I mean, I paid people to play the lead stuff, and I never did master all that.
From January '63, there was an explosion of talent from Merseyside.
Well, yeah.
Did this enter your world? Was there a Deptford music scene?
No, not at
time?
all. No, not a bit. Not to my knowledge.
And how were
well,
you?
there was Little White Bull. What was it? Tommy Steele.
Tommy Steele, yeah.
We had that. Marty Wilde.
Yeah.
But that was very 50s based, wasn't it? In the early 60s, it did explode from Merseyside, not London. Did
Can
it?
you remember the first? I mean, was it the
Well, She
obvious
Loves
Please,
You.
Please
Love Me Do.
Yeah,
She Love Me Doing that harmonica.
Was it really that early? So Love Me Do.
Well, yeah, I was 12. Was that 63?
Yeah.
I was 12.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We had the tranny on. I mean, pop music was pop. We were young men.
So it got you.
I was a kid, but yeah, it was the harmonica and a bit of attitude. It was only, was it 63 or 4 when they played the Royal Variety Show, and Lennon did his quip about, and those in the expensive seats rattle your jewellery.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching that, and I liked the attitude. I liked the gag. We'd been used to Buddy Holly and Elvis, who were still serious people. You took it seriously. They were still a bit show busy.
Polite.
And polite, that's the word. And this lot came along. I mean, I've said it many times that the minor, again, I'm going to use that word, the very small m, the minor miracle of it all was that John met Paul, and then Paul brought his little mate along. George, what are the chances of that?
Yeah.
No, Lennon and McCartney with George combined in the world, my world, were the Mozart of popular music, and that is saying something. I don't use those sort of descriptions without deep meaning and thought. I mean it sincerely. And Dylan was Keats. You know, Dylan changed the Beatles. Let's not underestimate his effect on life. He changed the Beatles. He rolled the first joint for them. I mean, Dylan changed the Beatles, and you know what they did. So, so his own influence was kind of immense.
Who were your inspirations then at that time? I mean,
Well,
you were saying the Beatles, Dylan,
Oh,
and also the entertainment world.
I
mean,
knew
the
all
greater-
along. Well, those of us who, if you were, all we had, of all the pop spectrum, the only British acts that my friends and I at grammar school took at all seriously were the Beatles, because you never knew what turn they were going to take next. You never knew. And you knew they were writing for all these others. They were writing for Brian Paul. They were writing for Billy J. Kramer. They were writing for Scylla. They were writing for so many other people. They wrote the Rolling Stones' first hit. It's crazy. Come On, and then I Want to Be Your Man was written by Paul and John. Immense influence. So we only took the Beatles seriously, yeah, and the Stones because they peed in the petrol station, you know. We liked that. And there was a bit of the blues. We liked the blues. We liked a bit of that from America with the Stones. They were bringing in Lead Belly and Sonny, you know, they were bringing in Sonny Boy Williams. They were bringing in the black blues guys from the Delta. They were bringing their music to us, which we kind of liked. We felt part of, even though I was only 12, 13, 14, 15 in 65, 66, I felt part of something. And other than that, it was Motown and Stax, soul music and Stax, the Drifters, the Temps, Smokey.
A variety
Smokey.
of styles.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
of course, as young teenagers, we were looking at girls, and Motown encouraged that. Motown was dance music and sexy romantic music. You didn't really get that from the Stones or the Beatles, not so much.
So you're a solo artist, but then you had a band. Can you tell us about that first band, and were you songwriting immediately? How did that develop?
The first band I played in, I've always been a lone wolf, frankly. I mix. I'm not antisocial. I'm not unsociable. I do mix. A lot of people who do my job have to be alone a lot. You have to have it inside your soul. You have to like your own company. You know, I travel a lot alone when I'm not working. Well, it's working. I take a baby Taylor, 3/4 size guitar, and some recording equipment in my hand luggage, which is mini disc stuff, and I go to beautiful places. Even Merseyside, I come up to Southport. You know I do. I stay in that Ramada on the marina, and get a suite there with floor to ceiling walls looking over Morecambe Bay. And I'm alone, and I see 1 or 2 or 3 acquaintances and friends from the Liverpool area that I've known for 30, 40 years in some cases. But mostly I'm alone writing, and I always leave Southport and this neck of the woods. I always leave with a song or 3. Absolutely no question. I wrote 2 or 3 songs on the Stranger Comes to Town album here. I even nicked one of Gormley's Crosby Beach statues for the sleeve, the front cover. Had a photo taken with one of them. Yeah, I love this neck of the woods. I like it very much. Right from Cheshire to Preston. I like being here. But I go abroad too. I go down to Amalfi and stay down there and write alone. So you know, it's a solitary occupation. But I was in a band called Odin, which was a 4-piece folk band. I was the 4th piece. It was a 6'3" girl with long strawberry blonde hair. Her husband, who was about 5'2", odd couple. The fiddle player who came into the first Cockney Rebel, John Crocker, and me. But it was folk, and they sang folk with a finger in their ear. Well, I'm a London boy. We didn't have any of that. There is no London folk music. Since time immemorial, London has been cosmopolitan. Invaders, Romans, the Iceni, or as Tony Robinson on Time Watch insists on calling them the Iceni. Would you ever be a historical snob now? Boadicea, Boudica, that lot, and all the tribes, you know, the tribes that never stopped fighting in the south, you know, from pre-Roman times, Essex, Middlesex, Surrey, Kent, all had tribes that were forever in battle. And so London, when it became the capital of the country, after Colchester, it was just always cosmopolitan. Seafarers from all nations. So there was no genuine London folk music. You know, your Knees Up, Mother Brown and the Okie Kokie and the Lambeth Walk, but that's silly. It's fun stuff.
Musically.
There were no clogs down there. No Morris men. You only had to go out 40 miles out of London to Thaxted in the heart of Essex. It's only an hour's 50 minutes from the centre of London to find clog dancing. But it was in the cornfields. You didn't have that in cosmopolitan London. So I grew up without an indigenous feel of music.
So how does Cockney Rebel spring out of Odin?
Well, I had to leave that scene, finger in the ear and mugs of beer. It just didn't do it for me. Well, I didn't belong.
Yeah.
I didn't belong at all. It was nothing. I'm not being detrimental. It just wasn't my world. I don't know. I wanted a rock band. We advertised for people in Melody Maker for soft rock band, as a term that was used in those soft rock band, as it was known. Yeah, like cross between acoustic music and a rock band. Soft rock, it was called. It was known generally in the early 70s. And then I wanted a good shop window, a good marquee, a title for the band, and I was going through. My mother my mother, because I was I'd left home at 17, and by the time of 22, which we're talking about roughly, my mother paid me a visit in my flat. I was in the West End of London with 2 other guys, and she brought a little suitcase full of cuttings, clippings of my life as a newspaper journalist, reporter, and loads of my notebooks from hospitals and things, and amongst it was a load of poetry, poor stuff, but amongst it was this long poem that was autobiographical. It was a hopeless poem. I read it and got embarrassed, but it was called The Cockney Rebel. And I thought, that's a Cockney Rebel, that'll do. Drop the definite article, Cockney Rebel, that sounds nice. And it was only recently, after all those years, 35 years, a few years ago, that a national journalist was talking about me, and he said, and Steve Harley is neither a Cockney nor a rebel. And which is absolutely true in both cases. Fuck, I'm sorry. I'll watch it later. It's a horse race. My other passion, betting. It's interesting, yeah. After, 37 years of the band, this reporter on a national paper commented that Steve Harley is neither a Cockney nor a rebel.
Right.
And I think he had a point on both issues there. and I wrote personally to him, which I know he read. I wrote a personal note to him, got it to him, saying Neil Young was neither crazy nor a horse. Good name for a band.
Exactly. Nor John Lennon a Beatle. Get up to that. Taking you back to Merseyside, as we are, back in those early 60s, what other bands other than the Beatles might have stood out for you that came from this neck of the woods?
Well, absolutely nothing.
No, absolutely nothing.
No, I can't.
That's interesting.
I cannot lie to you. I would need a lot of hints here because
there were a few.
No.
Nothing hit.
The Beatles transcended popular music, didn't they? This is undeniable. You just never knew where they were going next, like Dylan. I mean, in '66, he's recorded 2 of the greatest rock music albums ever that will never be surpassed. In one 9-month period, Highway 61 revisited and Blonde on Blonde. The man was a prolific genius. And Lennon McCartney had to keep up with this. Never mind Brian Wilson over across the pond fighting his conscience and tackling his academic, intellectual loss as he saw it. His loss of face as well. And Pet Sounds was, a long time coming. And but when Rubber sold, you just said, wow, where are they going now with these harmonics? Harmonic mad collaborations on Rubber Soul. It's very, very musical, very musical. I mean, where George got, and Lennon particularly, I think, got those chords. We all knew about the Beatles when they were clever dick chords, the really fancy stuff. It was Paul on the piano. But I think it was a bit like me. A lot of my most musical songs are on the piano. But I can't play them on the guitar. I can't be bothered learning them. But on a piano, you're just all in 12 notes. So you move a finger and you've got this really fancy chord you can barely name. But Rubber Soul and then Revolver. What a period to be a teenager. What a time to be a teenager. All that in Carnaby Street too. I was a weekend mod. No, you'd have to prompt me a bit, Tim.
Well, the obvious names are Jerry and the Pacemakers, the Searchers, the Swinging Blue Jeans,
why?
the Foremost.
Oh, please. I mean...
Speaking to a little Fudley.
I'm sorry, yeah, but I, with the utmost respect, they were living in the shadows of greatness. I mean, I've always set pretty high goals for myself, for my kids and people around me. When we play live, there's a very high standard that they have to reach. I mean, I can't help it. I've never been easy to please. You're listing people that were easy on the ear, but ultimately were making music that wouldn't last the test of time. You don't hear those records on the radio. You're more likely to hear my early records on the radio than the people you just mentioned, with absolute respect to them. I mean, they may be watching this, and that, I've got no view. I'm not being snobbish or superior, but if you're talking about the Beatles, I can't go dragging every little acolyte along. I'm Sorry. I don't know how that-
Bringing it back to you.
God knows how that sounds. But
You explained it very well. When you first came to prominence, there was a certain style about you, 70s glam rock. Even would
Never.
you disagree with that?
Absolutely never.
Ooh,
No.
Then how would you describe it?
We were never
and how
called
did it
that.
materialise?
We were never known in the music press as part of the glam scene.
How would you
It
describe
was already
your-
dying on its feet when I signed to EMI, 73.
But there was a certain
No, a little bit
painted,
theatrical.
bit theatrical maybe.
We were a little bit theatrical,
Huh.
but the whole of the first album, I mean, the clue was in the title. I wrote a song about bizarre characters. I'd spent a lot of time on LSD, a whole 9-month period I wasn't down. And I saw people in an odd way for a lot of the time. I was high on acid, and those songs were all written while I was busking. I gave up journalism and had a year on the dole, and I was busking in London, most of the time having dropped acid, and I wrote those songs. In the first album we recorded, I was 22 years old, and we got a 50-piece orchestra, a 40-piece choir on some tracks. It's an enormous album, and they're all about real people that I knew, whose names I changed. It was theatrical. It was called The Human Menagerie. A zoo full of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. I mean, I meant it that way. It's an album packed with strange characters. It was theatrical. I gave them roles in the songs. Sebastian, Muriel the actor, Then later on, Mr. Soft, Mr. Raffles. They were both hit singles, but no one ever talks to me about these. Why everything called Mr. Quite a lot were. I mean, they were characters in my idea of the world's stage, But glam rock, never. You never saw a platform shoe in my band. Makeup was only for the first album, a little bit of satin and lace, which I write about. We were getting our clothes made by Granny Takes a Trip, which you've probably heard of, in the King's Road. We were in there one day having these satin trousers made and measured in Granny's, and Keith Richards was in there. He lived in Chelsea, and he was in there buying something much, much funkier. And he gave us such a look. Little young kids puffing it up, He gave us such a look.
It stayed with you, that look.
A lot of what Keith Richards has done has stayed with me. He threw a dagger at me once and deliberately missed me, but 3 inches in a door. Yeah, I was in Tramp, the nightclub, with my friend Rod Stewart and Keith, and he just had a mood change. Just a mood swing. We were standing against this door in Tramp, and I said something that jarred with him slightly, because we were all drinking God knows what. It wasn't a glass of Chardonnay in those days. It was bottles with him. It was obviously Jack Daniels, and I was drinking brandy with Rod, cognac. And he just said something upset him, or bothered him, and he just went, boing, boing, 3 inches from my head. I often wonder whether I'm making this up. It's so preposterous. Rod was at one of my shows on this tour the other night in London, backstage, and I said to him in front of his fabulous wife Penny, so that did happen, didn't it? Because he was talking. The Stones came up. We played with the Stones in St. Petersburg and Warsaw, not so long ago, and that story came up about being out on the road with the Stones, and Rob was interested. I said, that did happen, didn't it, at Tramp? Christ, yeah, he said. Christ, yeah.
Happy days.
Well, yeah, it's...
Here Comes the Sun was your Beatles song of choice. How did that come about?
Oh, God, don't it rankle when you read people say... And then there was his cover of the Lennon McCartney song, Here Comes the Sun. I read it. Sure. You just feel so sorry for him. It came about because I was a track short on Love's a Prima Donna. We were at Air Studios for weeks on end. We needed another 4 minutes. I hadn't written it. And I think I was in a car being driven from my West End apartment to... It was actually Abbey Road. We'd come out of there, we'd back into Abbey Road. And on the way there, I walked in, and the guy said, have you got a song to routine? And I said, yeah, we're going to do Here Comes the Sun, but we're doing it my way. Apocalyptic. not Here Comes the Sun in an English country garden. Mine's apocalyptic. I see that George could also see the worst happening. It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Think about it, acid rain that Dylan had just written about, Masters of War and stuff. So I saw it as apocalyptic. So I produced it with crash, bang, and staccato on the 16s on the ride cymbal, and all those accents, you know. It's my apocalyptic view of George's work. Sadly, I earned him a load of money, but I never heard what he thought of it. No, never met him, and never heard anyone report back. I hope he admired it, even if, because people cover my songs, and for better or worse, you listen to them, and even if they're sort of drivel, and a lot of Make Me Smiles are drivel, there's been 135 of them, only a few sound are original in their approach. You're always flattered. You think, crikey, someone's, you know, my friend Rod again, he has A Friend for Life, my song A Friend for Life, on his number one album. It's number one right now as we sit here. And it's the only song he didn't help write on the album is A Friend for Life. And to hear Rod, this great soul singer, interpret my rather difficult lyric, A Friend for Life, a song I know you know, it's quite a difficult lyric. And it's just so moving. So I hope George at least thought, well, Harley's gone somewhere with my song. It's not another version of my version, which they all did. Mine was crash bang London
Quite
Wallop.
extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary version it is, and gorgeous. On this current tour, you build part of the show around an album from 40 years ago. How do you view the original album, and have you made any major changes to the songs?
Not a change at all.
Not
when I said I'd play the album in sequence, that's what we're doing.
But it's live.
It's totally live,
So
and brilliantly
how
played
different is
by virtuoso musicians.
Yeah.
You know, we never split up acrimoniously. This isn't a coming back and putting up with each other. They've all remained my friends, the three of them. George, the bass player, died a few years ago in Canada of cancer. God bless him. He was one of life's great gentlemen. Cregan and Elliot have been my good friends in all that time. And Duncan went to Cape Town for 25 years, but we got him back. No, they're virtuoso players, as are the rest of the band, based in this area. The Mona Lisa twins, Lisa and Mona Wagner from Vienna, are in my band. Two young women, beautiful young twins, sing. They play about 8 instruments between them, sing fabulous harmonies with my band, male members, and they're like our children. We're all older than their dad, you know. So it's an exciting time, but it is. You get. I shot myself in the foot though by saying I'd do it in sequence, which we are. You end up, because with vinyl you had 18 or 19 minutes aside, then you got up and turned it over to play the other side.
Right.
We always ended side one with what you thought might be a single, and the 5th track in at the end of side 1 is Make Me Smile.
Right.
Well, I'm not playing that after half an hour of the second set. I'd end up playing to a half-hour empty room. Not literally, but you know, it's so enormous and popular. So I've got around it with a bit of the artisan in me has found a way around this problem.
And that way is? Can you?
Well, when we get there, I'm quite happy to present to the live audience what they've never have seen before is the original version, which is what I took to Abbey Road that fateful morning. I sat them all down like I did every morning and said, we're going to start a new backing track today, and here's today's song. And I played a slow blues. You've done it all, you've broken every code, you pulled the rebel to the floor. And they understood something was going on here. But Alan Parsons, my engineer and co-producer, Alan came in and said, why don't you try it quicker? And then Stuart got that backbeat mid-tempo rhythm going. And then we did the track, and I said, well, let's nod to the Beatles. We were in number 2 for 2 months, the one that everyone calls the Beatles studio with the staircase. I was there for years and years. I made so many records there, but Best Years was being made there for 2 months, and I said to him, let's give a nod to the Fabs. You know, the Beatles. Let's do some ooh la la la. You know.
So that is
basically a rip-off.
fantastic.
Well, yeah, of course, everyone can hear it. It's ooh la la la, ooh ah, and it's similar harmonies. George and Jim could sing, and some girls were on. So that was my nod to the Beatles
A fantastic nod.
in '75.
Well, coming back to the Beatles, is love all you need?
Crikey, if only.
Oh.
No, I was never once John Lennon became Mr. Ono. In many ways, I lost him. You know, he lost me. I didn't care very much, even though Imagine remains one of the most played CDs, albums in my entire collection. I mean, the moment it came out, some of my friends got it all wrong. I will quote them, but if I'm coming up to do a masterclass in January at the Liverpool Institute, and I know I wouldn't want Mr. McCartney to be hearing this unless he realises that you explain it and don't edit this entire. Because my friends, when Imagine came out, I loved it instantly, but they were saying, well, it's not hard to see who the brains was in that setup. Oh, hang on, guys. And then Paul came out with Band on the Run, and excuse me, would you like to repeat that remark? The equally between them, we're talking, could they be together? Each of them was exceedingly gifted. Could I say a genius? It's hard. Einstein was a genius. Mozart was a genius. Bazalgette was a genius. It's hard to say. But with a small g at least, come on, I've got to give them that. But no, individually and then together, what did you have? It was explosive, you know.
No arguments.
No,
From here.
good. But John, kind of after Imagine, Love, Peace and Time Out, I'm afraid, not my style. I'm more of a realist. He was floating and I don't do that. Not since I stopped dropping that acid in 1969, 70.
There's a time to stop.
I stopped when I had the first bad one. You don't want two of them.
Huh. So never again.
Gosh, no. My children know all about it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What do they make of
They were in my dressing room in the Indigo, the O2, just the other night in London. Bless them. And no, my son, he's very, very critical and he has to tear everything apart, very analytical. He's an engineer who became a barrister, so you can imagine how analytical he is.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he was saying, nothing is sacred, Dad. It's my favourite of everything you've ever done, but can you just explain? We swayed to and fro, talked of Michelangelo. And I said, well, not really. And so his mum said, Dorothy said, I think your dad was on those drugs at that time. Now, they all know, but they just, no, it didn't become of any interest to either of my kids. They're just intrigued to how I survived.
Skips a generation, perhaps.
Well, I was always a survivor. Always did love life. I wanted to be a reporter because I loved humanity. I was intrigued by it. Still am.
What took you the drug route then? Because there's a certain danger which was obvious even back then.
Yeah, but I never did anything. I never believed that LSD could cause me to jump off the 18th floor of a tower block like some did. You know, it could do. I'd even covered such a story as a 19 or 20-year-old reporter in Colchester. I was sent to the University of Essex in Colchester, where there were 3 or 4 1960s tower blocks, which are the student rooms, halls of residence. And I even covered a story of a student falling to his death from the top of one of these 20-odd story buildings on bad acid. So I'd covered that and still went on to do it myself. No, I never did the absolute dangerous stuff. I've always had a phobia about needles, to be honest, which served me right, and it kept me away from that one.
Right.
Well, I'm also a betting man, but I'm not a gambler. I bet a lot. I own horses. I back horses. It's a therapy, and I can never bet more than I can afford to lose. Kids there wouldn't have suffered. It's not an obsession. I'm in control. It's what I do, and I mix with professionals. When I tour, half my guest list, the friends that come to see Steve backstage are from the racing world. Writers and tipsters and owners and things. They're my friends. So I've always been a betting man, weighing up odds and reading form, even with life itself. But I don't gamble. I'm not on a roulette table where you can't win any more at 35 to 1 odds, any more than I would have mainlined. I'm not a gambler. That's gambling. But on the betting odds of a tab of acid, giving you something interesting to experience, rather than killing you, was so in my favour of surviving that I took the bet. Yeah. Sorry to. The analogy is weird. It's a bit of a mixed metaphor.
As a non-drug taker myself, I'm fascinated by it.
Well, I wanted to know, Tim. I was a writer. I am a writer. It's all I could ever be from the age of 12. So
Experience.
I had to experience it.
Yeah.
It seems no point. It's Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do what you are afraid to do." And I've kind of lived by that as a mantra. Emerson, do what you are afraid to do, and it gets you forwards. It gives you strength. You know, what's the worst that can happen? I can deal with that. Well, then you don't have any problems.
Very good. Very good. Back in Liverpool, at the Phil, any thoughts on Merseyside and Liverpool audiences? There's an audience.
They sing with me. They sing.
They do.
There's a lot of singing to be done tonight, I can tell you. Yeah. I know I'd like to come here on the one in a million occasions when I actually have a tired, almost no voice, because they get me through. Yeah.
And 2016 is speeding towards us.
Yeah.
What's Steve Harley up to in 2016?
I'm going to be very busy, very busy. Interestingly, on almost the last day of 2015, on Sunday, December the 27th, 2 days after Christmas, I'm on live doing a session, an interview with Wogan on Sunday morning on Radio 2. And they've asked what I'm doing for his interview, and my promotion people have said, "Is that right?" And I said, "Yeah, I am. That is what I'm going to do." And there's two really interesting things that I'm going to talk to Wogan about. Some sort of sworn to secrecy because they want it as an exclusive, which I kind of like is weird, but I'm game for it for Wogan. It's like 8 million listeners. Why would I tell you? Sorry, I'm only kidding. But I know I will be really, really busy.
What date is that, so we can tune in to see?
Sunday after Christmas, December 27th, Radio
Right.
2.
Right.
But I am going to do an extended, maybe 30 dates is what I'd like it to be, of the UK and then into Europe, where I've got a lot of big audience too for it, is the 3 or 4 man acoustic show, which I love. And I will come here.
Back to the Phil? Liverpool?
No. I will come here and I will go to work where I adored. I love social history and architecture. So when I'm travelling and on the road, I see it all. I just adore learning, soaking up. And I played my acoustic set 10 years ago in what was the Neptune, which I understand is called the Epstein Theatre.
It is beautiful theatre.
God willing, I will go back there because it's about the right size for my 3 or 4 man acoustic set.
Fantastic.
I've told my agent about 6 venues in the country that I won't do the tour unless I get them. And I've said, you get me into the Epstein, you get me in there, the Neptune as I know it,
Yeah.
going up in the lift and the Edwardian beauty of the wood. Oh man, it just took my breath away.
It is beautiful. That and Lipper.
I'm coming to Lipper to do in January.
And that's just for the students, I take it.
Yeah, for it's a theatre with students.
So
at the institute.
Yeah.
Jeb McKenna.
Right.
Jeb McKenna. I'm doing it for him. It's like a bit of a joke. Every time I say, "What are you doing up there?" I say to people, "Well, I'm going up there to do a masterclass."
Yeah.
Masterclass, me? It's too ridiculous. Paul did one. What am I doing? I'll think of something. You know, as you now know, I've lived a life, and if they prod me for anecdotes, I've got them.
Yeah.
And I'm not scared of an audience of a few hundred, and I can play and sing.
Yeah.
So I hope it goes well. I'm looking forward to it. It's the first one of such a thing I've ever taken.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very interesting.
And the oddest thing is interesting. It was like I said yes, and then just like with me, that's what I have this mantra that I pass to anyone with their negatives. I can't bear negatives. With me, it's the answer is yes. What's the question? And I've taught that to a lot of people. It's a great way to live, very positive. And the moment I said yes to Lipper coming up to do this in January, within a week, my office got a question, the same question, completely unrelated, from half an hour from my house in Suffolk is Bury St Edmunds, and in Bury St Edmunds is the West Suffolk College, and it has a huge music department, sound technology. And about 15 years ago, as a local sort of big fish in a small pool, I went up there and cut the ribbon for this music block. I opened it for the TV cameras and everything, you know. And they've asked me back to do this masterclass after all those years. And it was within a week of Jed McKenna approaching us from the Liverpool Institute.
So a whole new career is opening up. Oh, master.
They offer expenses and stuff, and it's too silly. My office writes back and says, Steve can't wait to do this. Keep your money. It's like, you know, I couldn't take money. I mean, I can afford a hotel room and the petrol, and my assistant comes with me. I mean,
you probably don't want this bit being broadcast.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it's charity. It's giving back.
Yeah.
For me to perform to 200 students of music
Yeah.
or sound technology, I must have spent a year and a half of my life in Abbey Road. They'll want to know about that. You know, it's the home of the gods in Greek mythology in our business. You know, the equivalent of. So no, it's nothing to me. I don't have expenses picked up.
So the first one's coming up in January at Lipper. Where else? Have you written it yet? Have you?
No, I've got a clue.
No, you haven't a clue.
I've got a clue.
Okay. So
I actually, I'm not computer madly literate, but I can do enough. And I did open a Word document as soon as I agreed to do the one in Liverpool. I did open one and wrote the heading LIPA notes, and it's still the icon is sitting on my, is it called desktop?
It is.
On my PC at home, so the icon is sitting there, and I see it all. But there's nothing.
You're halfway there, Steve. You're halfway there.
I was trained as a reporter
and a busker, so you're going to
busk.
Yeah,
absolutely. But as a reporter, you don't do anything till the last minute.
Right.
If a news editor says on Monday, I want that by Thursday at 10 in the morning, you write it on Thursday at 9 in the morning. Fleet Street, they're all like that. They're all like it. You do the deadline, you meet it, but you meet it with no room to spare.
In that case, I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to enrol as a student at Lipper because I want to be there on this day.
You should ask them.
I will definitely ask them. I do know them there.
Where's Bill Harry?
Bill Harry.
Talking of Mersey Beat.
Speaking of Bill Harry, Bill and his wife are not well, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
And his wife is very, very ill, much like Jane, unfortunately. So she's in and out of hospital.
Pass on my best wishes to Bill.
Very difficult.
And
a
his
lovely
wife.
couple. I will happily
Bill,
do that.
known in London in the late 60s and 70s in the Speakeasy, the famous nightclub, The Speak, where musicians in the industry went. He was known affectionately as Mersey Bill. And Bill was my first ever publicist.
Right.
Yep. I don't know how my then managers met him. 25 quid a week. 1972.
That's a bargain.
73.
Even then.
God knows. It translates to 300 or 400 or 500. I haven't got a clue. But Bill, Harry, and I have thought of him with deep affection ever since. The loveliest man.
I couldn't.
And he got me my first Melody Maker and new NME front covers and things.
Right.
You've got to remember that.
He's a great guy.
People like me don't forget people like that.
On that very happy note, and I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah,
Bill is
good. I'm glad
one
to
of
hear
the
that.
very special people who I've known for over 30 years.
So
He's a love.
He did change for the better then. No, just joking. Joking Bill.
He
That's
is an
fantastic.
absolute love.
Wish them-
the real deal.
Wish them good health.
As are you, Steve. That was a delight. Thank you so much. I know, especially on a night like this, I really appreciate this from the bottom of my heart.
Certainly my
Always
pleasure.
a joy.
My pleasure,
to
Tim.
meet
Yeah,
you.
it's always a joy talking to you.
Thank
nice
you
to see
so
you. Thank
much.
you.